probably they just
Okay.
jump in on the call.
Well, why don't we go ahead and get started since it's 6 and I firmly believe in starting things on time. And then if people join, they can join.
Sure. So I personally had a question about those files because I wasn't able to load them in the RStudio. However, we kind of troubleshooted with you. It looks like it worked, but what I've noticed is that when you send me that file, CSV file, I was able to load that file specifically. But when I download that file from the assignment itself and try to load it in the RStudio, it says unauthorized. I don't know,
Yes.
maybe like already said, maybe it's a Mac thing or something else, but
Yeah,
maybe it corrupts the data.
Yeah, I think the data was corrupted because, and I don't know if your Mac downloaded the CSV file and tried to convert it or something, because sometimes that happens to me. Like it really wants it to be an Excel document and not stay a CSV document, and so it could just be that, like the way that I sent it to you in the attachment in the email left it, because it's literally the exact same file from the exact same location that I uploaded it. So and I didn't get anyone else with that error, and I did some more research into unauthorized, like it was showing, no data, and I couldn't, all I could find was like basically that the data was corrupt or it wasn't in the correct format or whatever. So
okay, then going forward, if I encounter the same issue, I'll just shoot you an email and probably ask you to send me original files if you don't mind, if that might help. Because we might assume that those files were corrupted or my Mac tried to convert them into another file. However, I don't think that was the case because it literally just says CSV file, does not convert in XML or anything else. So
okay. Yeah, that's totally fine. I would be happy to try and send it to you. Were you able to load Boston Housing?
Yeah.
Without, it didn't give you an error?
No, it didn't.
That's weird because that's a CSV file too. So, and
yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, loading documents in R for me is like 50-50. In my doctorate class, I couldn't get a file to load and I had to use like a read dilim function instead. And I don't know why it didn't work. So I don't always have the answers. Sometimes it's like however you can get the data in. But I did download Boston Housing from the course and then read it in here, and I can see right away that it worked because I have 14 variables. I have my data over here in the global environment, so I know that it read it fine. I didn't use the import dataset function. I just made sure my file was in my working directory and loaded that file. So hopefully everyone else was able to get this in as well. And in this case, for this assignment, the script was provided. So that should have helped to eliminate some of the like typographical errors and little annoying bugs and things. So
thank you. Yeah,
well, so I think the next few weeks are like that, and then we start doing whenever we start doing the case studies, you'll be copying from the book, so you'll have to be careful about how you type things in. So okay, well,
I'm just curious if anyone else is using Mac OS and encountered any similar issues with files, or everyone is using Windows.
I haven't had any emails about the data files, and none for this week on anything actually. I think maybe one other person is using a Mac, if I remember right, that I know of.
Probably.
Sometimes people don't tell me, like usually that's information is volunteered because someone is worried that it won't work, so they want to know at the beginning of class, like, is it okay if I have a a Mac. So
Mhm.
with R, it shouldn't really matter. I mean, you could be on Linux if you wanted. It's not like Excel. Excel is like totally different on a Mac. R and RStudio should function mostly the same.
Yeah.
What can I help you guys with? What are we talking about today?
I actually managed to leave my questions at home, which I discovered like 5 minutes ago, and I was like, oh no.
Do you remember any of them?
No, I wrote them out. I have no memory. I write things out.
Oh no. Is someone at home that could take a picture for you?
And it's just let it go. I'll figure it out. I always do.
Rob, Bradley, how's it going?
It's going. I was gonna say, you sent me the email, the message about my files, the knitting. I don't know. I'm kind of stumped to be completely honest with you.
Which assignment?
For both, honestly. Excuse me. So I went back through everything that we did this past week, just to kind of go through the scripts and stuff that I was writing.
Mhm.
But whenever I try to knit, I get errors, and I go through the code and everything is fine. So I'm getting the error is the trying to use CRAN without setting a mirror. I don't know if anyone's encountered that one.
Oh, that would be related to installing a package.
Right, and that's what I did. So I went and I tried to reinstall all the packages, and I uninstalled and reinstalled all the packages, and it's still not working. So
Can I see your screen?
Yeah.
Which packages are not working?
So let's see, it's line 173.
Oh, I gotta stop sharing. Oh, sorry. Hold on, I might need to allow you.
Right. All right. There you go.
Because usually when you install a package, there's a pop-up and then it asks you to choose, like a mirror, and I always pick cloud, the first one, because I'm lazy.
Right.
Like
So,
whatever
yeah.
gets it installed. Something new. Okay.
So for 173, so here.
Typical.
And then-
Okay, do me a favor. Go to the install in the GUI over on the right under
Mhm.
files. Yeah. And type in Tibble. And then install it. Okay, it worked.
Right. So let's see if it'll run this script. Wait, sorry. And that's the thing, is like it runs. Actually, let's try to knit.
So
So-
hold on. Okay, so knit does not like install packages in it. You
Mhm.
need to remove the install packages command. Once you have the package, you're good. You don't need it
Okay.
in your code anymore. Even in future scripts that you write,
Right.
Tibble's installed. So you just need to call library, which is something you don't have. So that's another reason you're getting an error. So before line 173,
Mhm.
you need to call the Tibble library. And
So
you could do it in the same
really,
chunk.
In the same chunk, yeah.
Yeah.
we just erase that code, right? After it's installed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just like I actually, when I install packages, I just open up a blank R script
And then just close
install
it
them.
out.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
And
sense to you.
I don't know if I don't know if any literature will tell you that. It's just something I learned, especially after debugging with students. Knit doesn't know what to do with that because
Mhm.
yeah.
So to be honest with you, that's been my only problem.
Oh, look at that.
That's everything. So
It looks like it worked now.
let's see.
At least your table's
Oh,
running. Oh, no.
there's another one.
oh,
There's another
okay.
package.
Yeah, okay, I know this
So,
error because I already
yeah.
troubleshot this, I think, before us. Okay, so if you go to your select filter, wait,
Mhm.
could not find okay, there's another library you need to call. Do you remember what it was, Boris? Is it Dippler?
I thought that I did.
Hang on. Let me,
Let me check real quick as well.
I think it might be Dippler. Or select function. It's the Dippler package. Yeah. So you
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
call it before the select function, the library, and you probably have it already installed, that DPL.
Yeah.
If you don't, it'll tell you when you try.
Right.
Now in the book, it tells you in the text DPLYR
Mhm.
that select is a Dippler function, but it assumes you've already loaded that library. And so it's one of those things that like you have to kind of like catch from context, like, oh, I'm calling, a function. But if you ever get an error that says it can't find the function, it means that you need to call the library that function is housed in. That
Okay.
error always means that.
All right. And then, one more thing too is I wasn't sure if we were supposed to do the whenever we were calling to the SQL database, because I was getting errors on that one as well. It wouldn't connect to the host.
Oh, okay. You could probably just delete that code then. Can you run that chunk really quick?
This one, yeah.
I just want to see if you have the function. Okay, it looks like you are gonna have to install it. So just use the install. Yeah. Okay, now try running that chunk. Yep, it worked.
Alright, cool.
You don't have anything output, so but it worked just fine.
Yeah.
And then the code, is it the last bit of code?
Yes.
Just delete it and turn it in. It's fine.
Okay, cool.
This is hit or miss.
Right. And it could be the same thing for
It probably is, but
Okay.
don't worry
yeah.
about it.
But other than that, that's like the only problems that I've ran into so far. So
Okay, well now that
Yeah.
all your code runs, will it now? It started to before. I was so hopeful. See, that's a good sign.
there we go.
Haha.
Cool. All right. So that's what I'll go back through and
Wow,
right.
look at that. That's really fancy. Okay.
all right. Perfect. Now I don't feel like a failure.
If you guys get stuck on stuff like that, it probably is best to save it. And then if you can't make it on Thursday, I can meet with you another time. But I don't want you to spend hours and hours stressing when I can just tell you in a few minutes, like, oh, you need to add the library. Because I guarantee you, next time, like next week, Bradley, if you get that error again, you'll remember this and you'll know. But
right away.
if you had Googled that error, you probably could have figured it out just by reading through tech forums, but reading through tech forums is kind of hit or miss because sometimes people use language that's just like absolutely unintelligible. And
Right.
so yeah, if it can't find a function, you're missing a library.
Okay. Perfect.
I need to write that down as a highlight. Of course I have. So when you have 7-year-old girls, Post-it notes are not safe anywhere in your house. Like literally, here we go. Just looking for anything to make a note on this point. So Okay, what else, guys?
I was curious, what would you say about the bin code command?
Oh,
in the
yeah.
dashboard? You asked me that question, and I honestly don't know the exact
Yeah, it's
answer.
that's
I,
okay.
I took that from the video of I believe his name is Kurt.
Oh, Kurt. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I haven't seen Kurt's videos and so since I was a master's student, so I didn't remember that he mentioned that. Can you stop sharing and then I'll show you a little trick though. It's not going to help me answer that question, but I'll show you something. So if you're ever wondering what a function does, hold on, I want to just create my own chunk here. What was it? Bin code?
Yeah, bin code. Yep.
I think I can do it this way. That might not, I might need to put it, oh, yep, okay. So you can use the help function to figure out like what a package or a function does. So like when you brought up bin code, I didn't know what it was, so I looked it up through the R documentation first. And I said, oh, okay, it takes a numeric vector and returns integer codes. That makes sense. It tells you what arguments the function takes. So when we get into like ggplot or actually, I guess you're doing it this week, but when you get into like graphics packages, sometimes there's a lot of arguments that are optional, but they allow you to customize the look and feel of whatever like graphics or plots you're developing. And so sometimes it helps to just pull up the help, the R documentation, so that you can see what the arguments mean. So they'll tell you like, this changes the color, this changes the like width of the histogram bars, whatever. So it's kind of a useful feature. I think, you probably read about it, but I just wanted to bring it up again, that you always have this option. So it tells you which vector is converting. It sorts it, and then you can tell it whether or not the intervals are like closed or open in your logic, and then it bins it. And I think basically this is just a really fancy way of like bumping things to 0 or 1, depending on where they fall in the spectrum. So it reduces the complexity of the data, but as far as I know, it doesn't actually reduce the number of variables of the total data set or anything. It's just altering like a vector. But I tried to find out more about this. Like sometimes I wanted to figure out like, I was hoping somebody used it in an example that I could look and see like why you would use it in real life.
I think Kurt was using it as an example in this dimensionality reduction video. He tried to like reduce the data, I believe.
Yeah, I could see that because it does reduce the complexity of the data. So I guess that counts. I think I was just interpreting, or I interpret dimension reduction a little more literally, maybe than Kurt does. But I tried to find an example of somebody using it for a dimension reduction and I couldn't find one online. So other than maybe what Kurt did. I should go back and look. And now I feel bad that Kurt brought it up and I forgot that he talked about it.
Yeah, it's like in the middle of the video, maybe like 22nd minute or 23rd.
Okay. I'll go take a look and see if I can follow what he's saying. But yeah, our documentation is here, and you can also just search for help stuff up here. Wonder. So I think this can be pretty useful if you're trying to figure out more about a package and or like what functions you have available. Our documentation is pretty good, so take advantage. What else?
I posted a couple things in the chat there. And I can go through them if I'm up.
Oh, sure. Let's see. Oh. How'd you figure that out? Around getting around the install error.
Oh, the repository thing. I just Googled it and also looked in the help for, setting the repository in RStudio.
Oh, interesting. Maybe yeah, maybe sometimes it just like it was just blank or something, so it doesn't know where to call the packages. So thank you, that's really helpful.
Yeah,
I'll put that in my notes. Okay, so what's the difference between brackets and parentheses?
yeah, in the RStudio, I've noticed sometimes it'll have brackets in there, and sometimes it'll have parents in our code. Is there a distinction on when and how those should be used?
Generally, parentheses are tied to functions. So the opening and closing of a function, and then all the arguments are contained within. We use the brackets when we're calling like an element of a variable. So like you saw, you can call, for example, in the Boston housing file, if I wanted to take like the max of one of the columns,
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to do that? I'm trying to think of a good example of when I would use, actually, let's just do this. Well, it's more like a vector, sorry. You'd be like, if you want to call an element of a vector or a matrix, so I guess that wouldn't work for the Boston housing, because we call the column using generally we would just use the $sign, and I don't remember what any of the variables are.
Okay.
So what would be a good example?
Well, I think that kind of makes sense to me a little bit too, about calling the elements or other attributes.
Yeah, so if I had a vector, and it had like 5 elements, and I just wanted to print the second element. Oh, how do I do this? I think I can. Is it gonna yell at me? Did I?
Well, you don't need that.
Oh, my capitals. I forgot what I named my own data frame. Okay, yeah, so like I called the second element of my vector, and so see it printed out too, because that's the element in the second position.
Okay.
So same thing with like a matrix. You can call, so a matrix though is 2-dimensional. So your argument for a matrix is going to be like, let's say this was a matrix and not a vector. I have to tell it to like how many rows down and how many columns over in my matrix.
And then just the column means the first row.
Yeah, so that would be like the first column's position. I forget
Okay.
which way it goes. Oh, actually. Well, anyway, I don't like to code on the spot. It's too much pressure. Yeah, it goes, I think it goes, oh my God, I don't want to say the wrong thing if it's row, column, or column row. It should have been covered. Let me just double check. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does
When you
now.
would- when
Yeah,
you would use the brackets.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. I think we created some matrices last week, right?
Yeah, and then this week as well.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, so the row, it goes row and then column.
Yep.
So, and they kind of show in this text, which is different. I don't know if this will help, but see how they're like trying to show which position things are. So you can see like the row, and then if you leave the, if you call the, if you leave the other spot blank, it just returns that whole vector. So if you did like 1, nothing and close the brackets, you get the full row 1 returned.
Okay,
But if you called like 1, 2, you'd
Mhm.
get row 1, column 2, whatever's in that particular spot.
right. Or if
And
you
it-
did like the 2:3 or whatever, right? You get the range, or 2:4.
Yeah, correct. And then if you leave the first one blank and did a comma and then called something, it would give you just the columns.
Sure. Cool. And then I had one more error that I was getting, if we want to move
Okay,
on.
let me look it up. Let me check out the chat. Okay. Round. So your incompatible dimensions. Well,
So that one was kind of confusing as I tried to do a little research on it, and I haven't gotten real far on it, but it just says my number of columns and my headers are not in sync in the CSV file, but then I went and looked at it and they all line up. So I'm not
it
sure
looks
why.
fine.
If anybody else got that error or if I just did something wrong.
Did you try just running the first function before adding round? Just
Yes,
to
and
see-
it worked fine.
Okay, so it's
Oh,
the
no, I didn't split that up. No, like that. No, I did not. Not yet.
let me try it.
It was comma 2.
I got the same. Is that what Kurt did? So it's the core function.
Mhm. Yeah, that line was right out of the textbook, so I'm not sure.
Why? Oh, I don't think you need. Yeah, you don't need to call. So that is the, like you were telling it the dimensions, but it will default to like the dimensions of your data set if you don't specify. So yeah, so when you tried to specify the dimensions, that's why it was yelling at you. You were telling it to make like a,
Okay, so if we're trying to round it to 2 decimals, is the 2 in the wrong place then?
yes.
Because the 2 should be
So
the round. Okay,
it
and
should
then
be
okay,
right
after that.
here.
Okay,
See, Now,
Okay.
now it updated it and it changed all of them to two. Okay, I didn't realize that that's what you were trying to do, and I was trying to figure out why you were adding that argument into the core function. So
Well, yeah, and I think I copied that out of the book unless I copied it wrong. So, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, so be careful with your nested parentheses, because yeah, that's all that's what was happening, is it was attributing that to the core function, and you don't need to use any of these other arguments. So.
Okay.
Cool. Look at that pretty correlation matrix. Another way to check your correlation matrix is it should be all ones across the diagonal. So if it's not, something went wrong.
And maybe a question along these lines
Mhm.
about case sensitivity. What's the difference between using space and not using space? For example, if you scroll up to the very beginning of the code, you will see that after setup, we have a comma and we have, no, actually, when the first chunk starts.
Oh, right here.
Yeah. For example, why do we have space there, but we don't use space anywhere else? Yeah, for example, here.
It doesn't matter. Literally, it's a stylistic preference for coding. It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I use VS Code to do my R work for my doctorate, it yells at me for not adding spaces. It doesn't affect it from compiling. It yells at me for not being more professional putting spaces, because it's easier to read. So it kind of depends. If you're ever like in a new job and you're doing coding or developing, go pull up like code that already exists and see how they do it, because it works either way. It's just a matter of like what people well, some of it is like industry standards, like best practices, like not having too much text on one line. We use line breaks to make it easier to read, like the way we comment our code and stuff. But other times it's literally just like whatever the preferences for that particular team or whatever. So
Got it.
yeah, it doesn't affect the compiling of the code at all. It's just for readability, and that's just more work for me, so I didn't put it in.
Got it.
Did anyone else have any like errors or questions or things they wanted to look at?
I mean, frankly speaking, it all seemed to be, personally for me, like to kind of challenging, because for me it's more of like computer science versus just a regular course. I could ask as many questions as I wanted, but I'll just continue just trying to be catching up as much as I can. Not trying to be negative, but that's my focus for this quarter.
Yeah, you got this. I won't let you do poorly in the class. I've never had a student fail my classes.
Okay.
As long as you're willing to show up and meet with me if you're stuck and solve it together, you're good. You're going to do great in the course. So I don't want you to stress about that.
Okay.
I don't want anyone to, to do poorly in the class. And there is like a lot of mixed content. I tried to, it was worse. And I tried to streamline it a little bit. So I tried to make it so that the first bit is like more focused on R and concepts and kinds of things that you like, high level concepts that you need to know for most like applications of R in the real world. So like dimension reduction can get a little bit complicated as a topic, and the text, not the data mining with R text, but the business analytics, data mining for business analytics or whatever. I don't I find that text really wordy and at times mathy. But everyone has different learning styles, so that's why you kind of have multiple resources at your disposal. But basically the concept is just like a lot of times you're going to get really huge data sets, and you don't want to run a model on like 500 potential variables if 470 of them are pretty much useless and explain very little variation in the data. So if you can clean your data set ahead of time and cut it down to the like most impactful vectors, then when you go to run your model will be less, when you build a model off that data, it'll be less complex, but also it won't affect the quality of the model because you were just basically reducing noise in your data set.
Mhm.
So that's like the high level, like what is the point of this week? And getting your data into a data frame, looking at what variables you have, taking variables out, which is essentially like if you're thinking about a spreadsheet, deleting a column is removing a variable. Looking at correlation, because that tells us how closely any of the variables are related to another. So if we're studying age, we can see, like this variable has, basically nothing to do with age. So we know a lot of these are bad candidates. This is a pretty strong, the nitrous oxide levels and distance from city center, so we use this to tell us a little bit about our data and kind of guide us. So we can start right off the bat and drop like probably 2/3 of these variables from our analysis and just consider the ones that are going to have high impact on a model. So that's kind of the purpose of the exercise for this week.
Mhm. I believe even Kurt was saying that even for him, the textbook, I don't know if he was talking about the same textbook, but he said the textbook was too wordy for him as well. That's why he tried to touch it on, like you said, high level of the topic in the video.
I'm slowly, it's hard to build and design these courses because, well, for one, R changes so much, well, that's not true. R doesn't really change that much, but a lot of programming, there are like new packages that are created and over time. And then sometimes like the data gets stale depending on where we got it from. So, or it's just not very interesting. Like using the data from the textbook, they're pretty uninteresting data sets. You're not, but they use them because they're clean and they know that you're gonna get, like some interesting results. There's variables in here that you can create regressions from and do some basic modeling. So that's why they do that. But I've been trying to find better resources, and my focus for this semester was just getting away from DataCamp because they no longer offer their course to students for free. So I had to find a new textbook for the R portion altogether. So I wasn't able to do any work on that textbook. So unfortunately, we're still stuck with kind of the overly wordy supplemental data mining text. But when we get to the case studies, I'll be interested to hear your opinion on whether or not you can follow those. They do get into some like pretty interesting techniques, I guess, like more advanced like neural networks and stuff. But the coding itself is not crazy. They're just calling functions from different packages and stuff. But it's kind of a matter of like how much of that do you really understand what the function is doing or the model is doing. So I'll be interested to hear, how well you think they explain what those functions are doing when we get to that part. But
That's all I had on my end. If anyone has any other questions.
Let me look ahead. Oh, more data viz. Okay, so practical forecasting. The first case study is in week 6. So next week and the week after are just kind of hammering home some more high level concepts and then using R. And I think next week it shouldn't be too stressful. It's the same data set with a blank page. That's really helpful. Are these all blank? Because that would really suck. Okay. I have to go find the what happened to my overview page. Yeah, so we'll be using the IRIS data set, which is, you can just call, it's like innate in the R. And we've used it already in the examples in the textbook, and then just making three of your own visuals. So Kurt goes through some functions like through ggplot, but you can, this one, I think this one's kind of fun because it's not a huge ask, but you can go crazy if you want to. So you can go look up like all the graphs that are available, like under ggplot2, and pick one and try it out and just see what you get. Some of these you might not have the right data. Like we don't have time series data for the IRIS data set, but yeah, so have fun with it. It just, and you can look up like anything you want to make, you can find. So if you decide like I want to do a density plot, like most resources are going to be really helpful. So they'll tell you like call the library. ggplot has themes, so you could even change the theme of ggplot if you wanted to. It's really up to you how how much you want to play with it, but it's really meant for you to kind of get used to playing with those the arguments that go into some of these functions. So so the density plot is this geom density function. And it looks like this plot's a little bit complicated because you have to do a regular plot first and then tack on another plot. So I'd have to like look this up in the help and figure out what it's doing. But you could pick a simpler one like a box plot. You could do the ones that Kurt does. I think he does like some histograms. So for ggplot with the histograms, you can set the bin width, you can set the color, you can change the actual like size of the bars. You can add titles and subtitles. So all kinds of things, that might be useful to you if you were processing data in R and you needed to produce a chart for like an executive slide or something. You definitely want to be able to add in a title and maybe even a subtitle so that people know what they're looking at. You might have, like, I know for me, for the government, we try to make all of our graphs ADA compliant. So like a colorblind person could interpret them. So avoiding like red, green color scales and stuff like that. So you might want to change like the color scales, for example, if you know that like your boss is colorblind or whatever. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to play with some of these settings. So for this week, it's just mostly just playing this next coming week 4, just playing with it and having fun. And you don't have to use ggplot. There's other packages out there that do visuals as well. So yeah, whatever suits you. And if you get stuck, just send me the code or like the screenshot like you've been doing, and I'll try and help. Okay, is there anything else that I can help you guys with, or that you're really stuck on? Looks like we got knit to work for everybody. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't have any more knitting issues in the future. It generally run your code, and if your code doesn't work, knitting won't work. So always check your code first and chunk. I like to do chunk by chunk, just because it helps, break out, it helps you kind of identify where the problem is a little bit faster.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Have fun next week.
Yeah. See you
Can't wait
next
to see what you guys come up with.
week. Sure.
Anyone else? Some of you just have been just observing, so I just want to make sure everyone got what they needed. Okay. All right. Good night, guys.
All right, thank you.